One of the ways I test the Afro Frontier thesis in my book is by reading other books and finding an intersection between the ideas I talk about in my book and the ideas presented in another book. It shows if my book is relevant or not. So, I'm going to read a little bit and then provide you some idea of how I think my Afro frontiers. Yesterday, I ended on a thought about the intersection of ministers, military men, and black Freemasons. And the reason why is because I use those three institutions and the people who head them to signify the black colonization continuum. It's a long story, it's in the book. I'm not going to go through all of that in my book. But the black colonization continuum requires one, if not all three, of those institutions in order to maintain itself. So if I'm reading this book, then I actually get to see if those institutions exist, if they interact with my work. All right, so this is page 24. African Americans in Maryland struggled to keep their families intact. 9-year-old Henry Highland Garnett's parents decided to flee Maryland to avoid being sold separately. After following the Underground Railroad to New York, young Henry served as a cabin boy on voyages to Cuba, where he witnessed firsthand the horrors of Spanish slavery. You can go back to the to other videos where I talk about Amistad, and it gives you the movie, and it gives you an idea of what Henry saw. Charity still escaped with her 4 children in an effort to be reunited with her husband in New Jersey, only to be recaptured and returned to her master on Maryland's eastern shore. Shortly thereafter, Still escaped once again, but had to leave 2 of her children behind in slavery, one of whom was later beaten to death. Henry Stewart, who escaped slavery from Maryland in 1855, vividly recalled the time when his master had negotiated the sale of a young boy on his plantation to a Georgia slave trader. When the boy's mother discovered this, she barricaded the young child in her house and yelled at the dumbfounded slave monger, quote, "You are after my son, but the first man that comes into my house, I will split his head open," end quote. So the idea that black people were not already human and had feelings goes out the window. That's what's important I think that. Because I think, sometimes, well, put it like this: a lot of people know nothing about slavery, and the people who have invested time and to understand slavery, um, a lot of what people present about slavery is a lot of trauma porn, right? But here, I'm only reading this to give you an idea of enslavement. And in my book, I don't talk about enslavement. What I talk about is the resistance. What I talk about is the resistance within the consciousness of black folks, people under the conditions of Americanism, or people under the conditions of blackness, depending on the time and space, and the space and time. Okay, so I'm gonna fast forward so you can get an idea of what I mean by the intersection with my book. Ministers, military men, and Freemasons. Well, military personnel. Page 25. Free black people in Baltimore, and Maryland endured the same punishing social conditions facing their counterparts throughout the South. They were accused of insolence, rampant criminality, and collusion with the Underground Railroad. Now realize you still hear those words now about Baltimore and Maryland. Slaveholders pushed for the passage of laws to force free blacks to move out of the region. The Baltimore-based Nile Weekly Register magazine commented, quote, "There is no state in the Union in which the ingredients for civil strife of the most fearful character are so largely congregated as in the state of Maryland," end quote. William Watkins remarked, "We live among a professedly Christian people." Ah, ministers, black ministers, see, already. Anyway, that's one intersection. Let's see if I can find some military. Let's see. Page 27. African Americans in Baltimore who gathered in August, like now, 1825, so that's how many years ago? 200? 200 years ago? Yeah. Ooh, wow. Okay, to commemorate Haitian independence and the first successful slave revolution in history, knew firsthand what tyranny was. They lived every day with the fear of physical violence, economic insecurity, and re-enslavement. 200 years ago, and black folks are still experiencing the same. But let's see. They looked to Haiti as a beacon of liberty. See, intersecting my book, unlike anything that existed in the United States. Sovereignty, see? Yep, black sovereignty. Local people had direct contact with Haitians. Masters had brought them to Baltimore. So, it's about 10 minutes. When I look at my book and then I see it intersecting with this book, I can see the relevance based on this notion of continuum. And I describe it as a black colonization continuum. And the reason I do that is because I'm talking about blackdom itself and the colony. So